Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another day of movement lessons, lockdown lessons. So today's lesson is going to be kind of using the imagination, a little bit of movement, to see if we can kind of explore our ribs in a way and help them become more agile. So I kind of planned out this lesson, and it doesn't really require much planning because it's kind of conceptual. So I'll see kind of as we go through the lesson, like how people find it, and I'd love to hear your feedback afterwards as well. Yeah, just again to mention at the beginning, if anyone watches this, hi Annette, good morning. If anyone watches this on YouTube, or if you have a YouTube account and you want to just head over to my YouTube channel and hit subscribe, that would be really helpful to me. Having 100 people subscribed gives me a custom URL, and that's something that I'm looking for at the moment. So thank you if you do that. Again, it'd be great to hear how people are finding this week's lessons, if they found them useful. I feel like that this is a really kind of a rich subject, our ribs and how we kind of how we use our ribs in relation to the rest of our body movement. So I don't know, I hope that people have been finding it useful. Maybe people have noticed their breathing changed or how their sitting changed. But I'm really kind of, yeah, like it would be great to hear from people how they've been finding them. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Louise, Simone. Okay, so when you're ready, if you come to a comfortable sitting position, and as you do that, as you sit down and you kind of take a rest from what you were doing before, just notice how your attention can kind of like be drawn back into the body. More of your kind of more body awareness. You can develop more body awareness. As you stop, as you rest for a moment, your body awareness can increase. Good. And then just for a moment, notice your breathing. It might be useful just to check in with our breathing at the beginning of the lesson. This week I've tried to not focus on the breathing elements of the ribs because I think it's actually really interesting to think about the rib movement as well. But just feel your breathing, how you breathe this morning. And where does your attention naturally go in terms of the breathing process? So what part of the breath do you feel most prominent in your attention? Is it the movement of the chest, the abdomen? Good. And so hopefully that's kind of allowing you just to slow down a little. And then I want to go back to something that we did a few days ago, and this kind of exploring of the first rib. So what I'd like you to do is, as you've got your eyes closed, imagine that you've got two fingers, and if you look for a second, imagine that you've got two fingers, and you're just kind of like tracing around the rib. And we're just going to do it with the right side to begin with. I'm just going to trace around. So if you see, this is an imaginatory process, okay? So you're just going to imagine that you've got two fingers on each side of the rib, and you're just tracing the rib around to the front, okay, where it joins in with the sternum, and then you're just using those two fingers to trace back to the spine, where it joins in with the spine at the back, okay? So just on the right first rib, using two fingers, just to imagine using two fingers just to trace a line around that rib and back, and do it really slowly. So part of this lesson is going to be done in your imagination. It should hopefully develop into movement as we go through it. So just continue to do that. Take your two fingers along the line of this first rib as if you can kind of feel the shape of the bone. Kind of where does it go? What are the angles of the bone? How does the bone like change shape as it goes round the body? And maybe you notice that the bone or the shape of the bone changes, or the feeling, like where you've got your hand, changes as you breathe. You might notice that. So you're just tracing, kind of in your imagination, tracing your fingers. You've got your imaginary fingers touching the first rib on the right side. And you're moving from the spine round all the way to the sternum and then back, very slowly, very back. See if you can keep your breathing smooth as you do it. Just coming backwards and forwards on that first rib. Okay. And then let your imaginary right hand rest. Take the index finger and the thumb of your left hand, again in your imagination, trace round the left upper rib. Again, from that point at the front by the sternum, tracing the rib round all the way round to the spine and back. And take your time, do it slowly. See if you can kind of, just by like using your imagination, resting your imaginary fingers on that part of yourself, just begin to kind of map out the shape of the bone, the trajectory of the bone, how the bone moves. How wide is the first rib? Can you get a sense of the space that's created within it? And take your time, go slowly round to the front. See if you can feel this kind of all the way around to the front and then all the way around to the back. Good. Okay, and then when you're ready, what I'd like you to do is just have both hands on this first rib, okay? And what I'd like you to do is, as you imagine taking one finger forwards, so your right hand's going forwards, the left hand's going backwards, and you're just tracing the opposite movement along the rib. Okay, so tracing one side coming forwards along the circle and the other side going backwards. And maybe you feel that as you do that, that encourages a movement, encourages your body to move. And just, if you feel that, if that's possible, or that feels comfortable, just let yourself move with this tracing, imaginary tracing. If it's useful for you to have your hands up here, then go for it. I'm finding that useful right now. And then just one forwards and one backwards, one forwards and one backwards, and just feel how they move, how the body can kind of move with that movement. Good. All right. Take your arms down, have a rest if you were using your arms. And then go through the same process with the second rib. And we're just going to work down as we've been doing this week. So now the second rib, which is not quite so close to the collarbone. It's the second rib, joins in with the sternum, comes all the way around the body and joins in with the spine. Okay, so now just using your imagination again, your imaginary fingers, take your right fingers, take the second rib and just trace the line of the second rib round from the back to the front. See if you can kind of get a mental image of it. Tracing the second rib. It's a little lower than the first rib. Just see if you can kind of identify it within your internal sense of yourself. And this is hopefully giving you a sense of the shape of the rib, the sort of space of the chest cavity. Good. Once you've done it a few times with the right, just do the same thing with the left. Okay, so you close your eyes, imagine tracing around the second rib to the front of the body by the sternum, all the way back round to where the second rib joins in with the spine. And you're just imagining tracing your fingers. So it's like your two fingers are on either side of the rib. And they're just kind of like tracing the line of the bone round the front and then round the back. And just take your time, like breathe as you do it. See if you can kind of build this sort of like image, this internal image of how your rib is shaped. Good. And then when you're ready, take both hands. And as you take one hand forward, so let's say you start with taking the right hand forward along the rib round to the front, the left fingers are coming round from the front to the back at the same time. So you're tracing the circle, but you're doing opposite movements. Tracing the circle, but doing opposite movements. And see if this encourages your body to turn. If there's a sort of sense of movement that comes with this tracing. As one hand comes forwards, as one hand comes backwards. See if you can be really clear that you're kind of tracing the second rib. That you're following the line of the second rib round, coming to the front, coming to the back. Both hands doing something different. Good. Take a little rest. Just let yourself sit there for a moment and breathe. Just feel if there's any kind of change. For me, I feel like I've slowed down just by doing that. I wonder what you notice initially. Good. When you're ready, think about the third rib down and just begin to trace with the right hand, going round the rib. Just imagine tracing it all the way around to the back of the body and all the way around to the sternum, where it joins in with the sternum and where it joins in with the spine at the back. It's like you're building awareness of your own ribs. And just continue to do that, taking the right hand round to the back. And notice, can you keep breathing as you do that? Do you hold your breath at any point? And because it's an imaginary movement, it doesn't need to be like too slow. So if you feel that there's a movement that comes around to the back and around to the front and it's relatively fast, you're just tracing the line of the rib. That's okay. Let your right hand relax, or imaginary right hand relax. Try the same thing with the left hand on the third rib. Just tracing the line of the third rib from the sternum round to the spine and back to the front. Again, hopefully this is giving you some sense of the three-dimensionality of the ribs. Tracing this line round the left side and back to the front. And notice, is the speed that you move your fingers on the left different to the speed you move your fingers on the right? Is there a different speed on this side of the body than there is on this side of the body? Good. When you're ready, bring both hands into the equation. Take both hands, take the right hand forward along the pathway of the rib, the third rib. Take the left hand backwards along the pathway of the third rib, so that you're making this kind of alternate movement. The right hand is tracing one direction, the left hand is tracing the other. And see if that encourages a tiny bit of rotation in the body. Does that make you think of how the body would turn, what direction the body would turn in? Could you think of this as the kind of the trajectory that the rib would turn in as you rotate your body? Tracing the third rib, the right hand coming around to the sternum as the left rib comes to the spine, and then vice versa, swap them over. Again, feeling the three-dimensional aspect of the shape of the ribs. And see if you kind of like imagine that you're tracing the bone. You know, your fingers are just resting on the bone. Good. Bring your hands down, take a little rest. I don't know, we're on the third rib and we've got 12 to get through. Cool. All right, so take your hands again, imaginary hands, place them on the fourth rib. In fact, we could just begin moving a bit quicker. So bring both hands into the equation. Bring both hands into the equation. As you trace the right rib going round the back of the body, trace the left fourth rib coming round the front. So we're just going to stop the first two stages where you take one hand and then the other and just go into the full movement. See if you can then begin to trace around the fourth rib, the front of the body, the back of the body, using your imaginary fingers to kind of trace the line of the rib. And see if this encourages a little bit of rotation. See if you can begin to sort of feel the rotation of the body as you do this. And let the body move. Don't be shy of letting the body move. So this is the fourth rib now. Can you keep breathing as you do this? Allowing your body to move as you rotate. Left hand coming around to the front of the rib by the sternum, the right going to the back of the rib by the spine, and then just bringing them all the way around, all the way around. Good. Little rest. And then when you're ready, bring your hands up again. Just imagine doing this on the fifth rib. So first we're identifying the fifth rib. So you close your eyes, you feel into yourself. Can you feel where the fifth rib might be in space, in your internal space? And then with your hands, just imagine tracing the line of the fifth rib. The right hand comes around to the sternum, the left hand goes around to the spine, and then swap that over. Again, this is the fifth rib now. In terms of kind of location of the body, you count down the ribs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is coming kind of into the center of the chest now. The direction of the rib coming into the front of the chest. So if that's helpful as a reference guide. So taking both imaginary hands, with your fingers touching either rib or both ribs, the left and the right, and just tracing the feeling of the rib round the fifth rib to the front of the body with one side, the back of the body with the other, and then just swapping that over. And see again, does this encourage some movement in you? Do you feel that as you trace one side round, it's like you want to turn to that direction? As you trace the other side round, you want to turn to that direction. Can you allow that movement? It's almost like you're kind of rotating the body in the direction that that rib travels. Good. Move down to the sixth rib. Again, using both hands, taking the hands in different directions, tracing that sixth rib down in your chest. Again, finding the sort of the internal or imaginary sensation of the bone and following it with your fingers, keeping your fingers soft. And then just see, does that encourage a little bit of movement to come into the ribs? Do you begin to have a tiny bit of rotation as you trace this line round? Making sure that as you trace the line round, you come all the way to the spine, almost like the imaginary fingers come in and touch the spine. And the imaginary fingers at the front come in and touch the sternum. And then they come round to the other side. So it's like kind of all the way around, being really clear that you're getting all the way to the end of the rib. And the movement might change as you go down the ribs. You might feel it differently. And when you're ready, if you move down to the seventh rib, a seventh rib. seventh rib is the last one that joins in with the sternum as a complete rib. The next three down from the seventh are kind of joined into the seventh rib and then into the sternum. So just tracing this line, this is kind of like a full rib all the way around to the sternum, to the spine, one hand doing one thing, the other hand doing the other. And can you just sort of encourage a little bit of movement as you do this, feeling that the movement could be in the direction that the rib travels. The rotation of the body could be in the direction that the rib travels. So it's like as you're tracing with your fingers, you're following the direction. Good. Traveling all the way into the spine, the rib, feeling into the spine, and then coming round and feeling into the sternum. And feeling the three-dimensionality of the ribs, that it's a space, it's a, it's got space, it's got shape. Good. All right. And then just take a rest. Take a rest. So from the seventh vertebra down, we're doing a slightly different thing. So we're going to let go of the movement of the hands. And you're just going to close your eyes and you're going to very gently see if you can just do it with your imagination, taking the eighth rib and just kind of following the movement of the eighth rib. And see if you can rotate your body to find the movement of the eighth rib. Like what direction does the eighth rib take around the body? And again, if you need a reference point, so this is the seventh rib. This is the full rib that joins in with the sternum. And then this one, the eighth rib, is actually joining into the seventh rib before it joins into the sternum. Okay. So you can let go of the movement of your hands, using your hands as a way of tracing this, and just see if you can do it with movement. See if you can feel that you can follow the left rib forwards and then the right eighth rib forwards. Just very gently, very slowly, kind of imagine the pace that you were using to imagine the line of the rib, and just see if you can find that pace for the eighth rib. What direction does it travel in? How, if you were following the direction of the rib, how would you rotate? Like what movement would your body make? Good. And then move down to the ninth rib. And just take a moment just to kind of like tune in with the ninth rib. And very gently begin to follow the line of that rib round from the back of the body to the front, and see if you can do it with movement now, not with your fingers. Can you trace the line of the rib in the movement, the rotational movement of the body? Good. When you're ready, move down to the 10th rib. This is the last of the ribs that's joined in to the 7th rib. So the angle of it is slightly different. It's coming up, comes around the body and up. See if you can find how to rotate the body that would trace the line of this 10th rib. I wondered when I was thinking about this lesson whether it was too abstract, but you have to let me know in the comments. Okay, and then we've got the floating ribs. once you've done the 10th one a few times, the floating ribs, you can see on my little friend, I come quite far in. They come round and they don't join into anything. They don't join into anything. And then you got another one here. So there's 2 floating ribs. And so you're using movement again, using your internal sense of yourself. See if you can trace the line of those 2 floating ribs as you rotate the body very gently to kind of follow the line of the rib. And just do the 11th rib to start off with, not both. See if you can be specific about following the movement into this kind of rotation, how that floating rib travels in the body. If you want, you could try and put your hands there and feel them, but in some way I think it's quite nice just to imagine the process. Good. And then when you're ready, move down and do the last floating rib. Okay, this is the 12th rib. And maybe you can make this movement very light. If you imagine that this is the smallest vertebra, you can make this movement very light, very soft, and you could even speed it up a little. Now that the rest of the ribs kind of understand their movement pathway, could you take this into a slightly quicker movement, following the pathway of the lowest rib? Okay, when you've done that enough, just have a rest. Feel how you're sitting. And just bring your attention to your breathing. Notice if there's any changes in your breathing, or just that you feel more aware of your chest in some way. You know, it's kind of, we've increased our internal awareness of this area of ourselves. So sit for a moment, and as you breathe, just notice the shape of the ribs, notice the movement of the ribs with the breath. And can you, like, using your internal sense of yourself, could you identify each of the ribs one by one? Okay. So almost up to 30 minutes again. Yeah, I'd love to hear from people how they found that. Like I said, I wasn't sure if that was a little too abstract sometimes, and I can't see people, so I don't know how rich the kind of instruction is for people. So it'd be great to hear from you. I really like lessons that use the imagination personally. I think that it's a really great way of like bringing our awareness more internally. So yeah, that was my offering. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And I will be back tomorrow, 11 o'clock. The lesson tomorrow is going to be a classic Feldenkrais lesson. They call it sitting rotation, and the more kind of affectionate term for it is dead bird, because you have your hand in a position that looks like a bird with an injured wing, which is a beautiful image to leave you with. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed all the lessons this week. If you want to rewatch them, you can do so in my Thoughtful Movements community group. You also in the group, if you want to like post stuff, if you want to suggest lessons that you might like or things that you'd like to work on, please do so within that community group. It's free for people to post stuff. And then also my YouTube channel, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to head over there and hit subscribe, that would be great. All right, thanks very much. I will see you back here tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed it and hope you have a lovely day. Take care. Bye.